All right, I am live. I don't know if I should do my normal intro. This is my first live session on YouTube, guys. Today I'm going to be doing my mailbag series where I take your questions that you guys ask me on YouTube, on Instagram, in person, wherever, and I answer your photography questions. Now, I've got 5 questions banked right here, ready to go. Before I get into those, though, I just want to let you guys know. Also, don't forget to check out my online store at justinmott.com, where I've got mentor packages, one-on-one portfolio review packages, remote workshop packages. I've also got presets that will not make you a better photographer, but they will add some popular images. I've got a little bit of everything on there. So go check that out at justinmott.com. So I tried this out, guys. I've got construction going on at my house. I haven't been doing my YouTube channel lately because of that. And I've been traveling on the road for my commercial photography business. For those of you that aren't aware of my commercial side, where I make most of my money in photography, that's at mottvisuals.com. You can check that out if you're into hotel photography and video production, that kind of thing. So you guys, this is my mailbag series. You guys can ask me any questions. Like I said, again, you can ask me in the comment section. I'll try to answer them live, but I've got 5 questions I want to get to today. And as the thumbnail said, I guess I'll start with that question because that's probably why you clicked on it. So the first question comes in from, let's see, from Quinza, Quinza, and that was from Instagram. The question is how to figure out how much to charge in your photography. Well, that is a tough one, and that's going to vary from photographer to photographer, from genre to genre, and it's also going to change from location to location. For example, when I was shooting weddings, what I could get away with charging, get away with, it sounds like you're committing a crime, but what I could get away with in the US for photographing a wedding was a lot different than what I could get away with than living in Vietnam. So for example, when I first started my career, I tried to charge about $5,000 for a wedding here in Vietnam, and I just got no bites at all. No one at all would was interested in hiring me. When I went back to the US, $5,000 for my work and sort of my branding at the time was fine. You know, people were buying it. So I had to sort of adjust my pricing for Vietnam. Now, that's not to always say you should give up if you charge a certain amount and you're getting like no bites in the beginning. It takes time. You have to build the branding around it. You have to assess your work and things like that. But you know, for every industry, it's different, right? I'll say for the editorial industry, you're going to, for those of you just joining on right now, I'm answering your photography questions. My first live series on YouTube here. Sorry if I'm a little bit scrambled. I'm trying to get things going here. I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. I hope the audio is okay. Let's see, is that audio all right in here? It doesn't sound like it's that great here. I'm just going to check here, guys. I'm tweaking it. All right. How's that? Is that audio a little bit better? Someone could give me a test here online to tell me how they feel the audio is. That would be very helpful to me. One of you guys watching right now, either give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if the audio is working well. All good? All right. just getting used to this. So again, guys, I'm answering your photography questions. We started off with the big one is how to figure out how much to charge in your photography. Again, different from location to location, where you're located. So again, I'll start with wedding stuff. So again, when I first started out here in Vietnam, I tried to charge several $1,000s for a wedding. I wasn't getting away with that. When I charged that in the US, no problem at all charging that. People didn't seem to mind. So you kind of have to understand the market. You have to understand your competition. You have to understand the genre you're working in as well and what goes along with that, how much to charge for certain things. So let me give you a couple examples. So in editorial photography, you don't figure out how much to charge, really. I mean, most people don't. Some might, be above that and say, I do this story for this amount of money. But most of the time, the publication you're working for will dictate the terms. So when I was shooting for the New York Times, it was $250 a day and $350 a day for travel. When I was shooting for magazines, most of them were about $500 a day. And that would include a travel day, which was only half of your day rate. So when it came to editorial work, I didn't really have a say. What I can say about editorial work is I learned how to charge for little things. Obviously charge for all my expenses, but I learned to travel and push more for travel days. Some good organizations like the New York Times would make sure that you charge that and make sure that they tell you to charge for that. And if you forgot, they would actually tell you to make sure that they did that for you. Most magazines won't do that. You have to fight for it or at least bring it up. Now, in the wedding world, it's going to vary because here in Vietnam, when you shoot weddings, you're talking a hugely, wildly saturated market and people going really low end on the price point. Not to say you give your work away for free, but you got to really figure out your competition. So be honest with yourself about the competition. Be honest with yourself how you stack up against the competition. and not just in the quality of your work, but the branding as well. When it comes to wedding photography, I've seen a lot of photographers out there that are just kind of average or even below average, but their branding is above average or exceptional. And that's where they get money. That's where they make a lot of money because that branding is so good. I mean, it's a saturated market. There's a lot of similarities and all sorts of, photography and like kind of your portfolios that you're gonna have. But when it comes to your branding, that's important. And when I mean branding, it's not just your logo. It's not just that. It's your website, your business cards. How you write your bio, how you sequence it, how the style of your website, the galleries in your website, all those things are super, super important in your branding. So that goes for commercial photography. It goes for, not so much for editorial photography, but it goes for wedding photography as well. So to figure out how much to charge, again, understand the market, understand your competition, be honest with yourself, how you stack up against the competition and adjust accordingly. Try different things, see what's working. Sometimes you're going to, try for a certain price point. And if you don't get enough hits after a couple months, then obviously change your pricing. But great question. The next question comes from Dominic Evans, and he says, how to go about reaching out to a small business? That's a great question. For a lot of photographers just starting out, you want to start locally. You want to figure out how to make money off of some business, how to sell your services to small businesses around. One thing I'll say, if you're a photographer approaching a small business these days, you're going to have to be able to do it all. So that's going to mean shooting content for them for Instagram, for Facebook, maybe even TikTok. But if I've avoided that. But I'm older, so I can avoid that a little bit. But shooting video is going to be important to sell your packages because there's going to be another team, another person that's going to be approaching them with that option, with being able to sell them on that as well. So they're going to say like, oh, I can do all these things for you. So when it comes to approaching a small business, what I would recommend is like to do things in person. Emails get lost. People are much more likely to reject you on an email than they are in person. Go in there, be kind, introduce yourself to that business owner. Go at a time where they're not so busy, where they have a chance to talk. Have something to leave behind, whether that's a business card, that's great. But if you want to go a step further, you can leave a little like postcard behind with some of your work, some similar work that they can actually see and say, okay. And then I would, in addition to that, like if you really want to get business from these small businesses, go to these chamber of commerce meetings, go to things like that. Again, just it's a hustle, networking, going out there. I would even offer. I'm not a big advocate of giving your work away for free, but maybe if you're just starting out, you could go in and say, okay, I'll take a portrait of you, just one, and then bring them back a printed version of that portrait. And, that's a nice way to introduce yourself. And then try to get in, introduce your pricing, things like that, what it would cost to do. Make it easy for them to hire you. Make it easy for them to buy your services. So great question. That's a wonderful question. Again, how to go about reaching out to small businesses, get there in person, go and meet these people, find ways to meet them, whether that's just kind of showing up at their shop during a low time and introduce yourself, or I would go above and beyond the traditional just email or Instagram message. The next question comes from Justin Ikpo, and his question is how to go about getting a media credential when you just are starting out. That's a tough one. But I have not a solution, but I have a way that I did it, and that's mainly for the US, and things have changed quite a bit. But so how to go about getting a media credential? Listen, there's a couple things. For big events, obviously, you're going to have a proper media credential if they're going to let you in, or if you want to go in the same areas where the photographers are allowed and things like that. What I used to do when I just started out in San Francisco, because I had no affiliation, I was at school, is I made a lanyard. I bought like a lanyard, and I just sort of laminated like a little picture of myself, like a pro picture of myself. I put my name. I put like, I think I put like freelance photographer on there, small, so they didn't know it wasn't like attached to one of the big, big agencies. And then I put my name, my website on there, and I just laminated it. Sometimes I had two of them. I just that actually worked a lot of times just for like, I wasn't lying because that's what I was, but I wasn't like using that. I'm not advocating like you do that and then pretend and sneak in and things like that. But I would use it for events where like sometimes they, oh, we'll let the photographer in, and maybe they wouldn't let other people in, and I would just kind of show that kind of like, oh, I'm a photographer, I'm press. So because I was a freelance press photojournalist, and I was going to pitch these stories around. So it didn't always work, but it did actually work quite a bit. I found myself, people trusted me a little bit more, let me into their lives a little more, let me into the world. I don't do it when I'm just going out and shoot street photography, but when I was covering like kind of public events and I didn't need to get to like an isolated area into like a giant arena or something like that, it would work well. And I would kind of talk my way into it using that. But it also just kept eyes off of me sometimes, like security people that might pay attention or might think like, oh, is he supposed to be here? But they just have that laminated thing. But how to go about it, like in an official capacity, write to the event organizers. Don't do it a week before or a day before. Do it months ahead of the time. If you want to attend a big music festival or big event, plead to their soft side. Like, hey, how about, do you give away a certain amount of passes to people that are unaffiliated, to the small guy? Do you have a diverse kind of people covering this event? Like, I would plead to that too, because they should open up their, not shouldn't just be to major newspapers that get to cover some events. It should be independent journalists, and reach them. Don't wouldn't be pushy, but I would be nice. I'd be kind. I'd be persistent and do it months ahead of time. And that's how I'd plead to their side about events. Like, oh, I know a lot of events. I would even say things like that. I know a lot of events also give a certain amount of passes to independent journalists or freelance journalists. Do you have any of those available? If so, how do I go about getting that? So that's how I'd go about getting a press pass. Those two ways: pleading to the soft side or making up your own fake one. Not really fake one. I don't really believe that. I think you're just writing who you are, and that's not lying. All right, the next question comes from, let's see, I've got two more here. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me in the comment section and I will do my best to get to them there. The next question comes from Kenny Drolet, and it says, how many pictures is enough to build a good portfolio? That is going to vary quite a bit on the genre of photography you're in and your experience. But just as a rule of thumb, what I like to say is, so for your landing page for a photographer, I would go with, like, if you're a professional photographer or amateur that wants to make money off of photography, have your landing page be about 10 to 15. I would say, even if you've got enough, go 15 to 20 of your strongest images that really represent like who you are as a photographer, and more importantly, the work that you want to get paid to do. So if you're in for business, have your landing page just be that. Have it be your most powerful work, from the first image your best, second image your second best, and onward. So maybe 15 for some reason feels right to me. That's about a good amount of images. If you don't hook them on one or two, they're gone. So make sure those first two images really represent who you are. But more importantly, if you're in it for business, make sure that they represent the kind of work that you want to get paid to shoot. So from there, then I would separate your work into nice galleries. If you're a professional photographer and you have different kinds of work that you do, portrait work, wedding work, things like that, it's going to vary. But wedding photographers, going to have more probably, especially if you're going to do like people want to see a full representation of a full wedding. That might be 50 to 100 pictures. It might even be more. If you're a photojournalist or a documentary photographer, you've got a story. That story might be represented in only 10 pictures. It might be a conceptual series you put together, or it might be a long form documentary that lends itself to 20 to 25 pictures. So I would say general portfolio gallery. So if you just have a sort of a well-rounded website as a photographer, and you've got like weddings, and you've got portraits, and you've got whatever else you shoot, landscape, travel, things like that, I would keep those to about like 20 to 30 images. If you've got more detailed galleries, like case studies for commercial photographers, or again a case study for a full wedding, those might go a little bit longer. Those might go more into like 50 to 100. But yeah, rule of thumb, I would keep it to like kind of under 30 images. And that's for like people that want to hire you. The more money they're going to spend on you, the more deeply they're going to want to look at your work. So if you're doing commercial work, like as a hotel photographer, I've got to put a lot of images on there in my galleries, because these people are going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on shoot, and sometimes even more than that. So they're going to want to look deeply at my interior shots, my exterior shots, my lifestyle shots, food shots, and things like that. But if you're not looking to make money off of it, if you've just got galleries that just want to represent your work and maybe sell some prints in there, then just put your best work in there. If you're a street photographer and you got different kinds of street projects that you've done, conceptual projects you've done, do a good edit of that work. Like, get rid of redundancy. That's an important thing throughout all your galleries. Get rid of redundancy. If you have images that keep saying the same thing, then get rid of those. Pick the best one. If you've got galleries for a specific story that are repeating the same thing over and over, and get rid of those. Get rid of the ones that aren't working. So again, just to wrap that up, I would say your lead images for your landing page and your website, go strong, 10 to 15, maybe even 20 images of your best work, the work that you want to get paid to do. If you're not in it for the money, your best images that really represent your style as a photographer. If you're really into street photography and you're not trying to make money off of anything, or maybe sell prints aside, don't need to sprinkle in like a bunch of portraits in there, or like an action shot or sports shot or wedding shot. No need. If that's your thing, like, show with the kind of work that you want to represent who you are and your style as a photographer. And then keep on updating those galleries as you get better work. I use those galleries on the back end for me as motivation to improve. Like, when I first started, I would always say, all right, my portraits, I've got 10 strong, but I want 15 strong. So let me work on that. Or my documentary work, or my street photography, or my reportage work, like, I've got this amount, but I want this amount. So I'd constantly be updating, constantly be weeding out old work for new work and better work, hopefully. So that's a great question. Again, guys, if you have any questions, I'll try to sneak those in here. If you want to ask me live, you can. I kind of did this last minute, so I don't expect a ton of people on here. I'm trying different things. Obviously, it'll gloss on me for this light. I'm gonna have to turn that down a little bit, but I'm trying this live thing because my studio downstairs can't do anything because my kitchen's being remodeled. But when that's done, I'll give you guys a little tour of my kitchen. It's gonna be kind of badass, actually. I'm excited about it. So the last question coming in through my mailbag series, and if you don't want to ask live, you can ask me via Instagram. The last question comes from Gary. Um, I don't know if I typed it in wrong. I think it's Gary Robinson. But I wrote Gary Ron Vinson. I think it's Gary Robinson. Or maybe it's Ron Vinson. I don't know. So this last question is, why did you choose your Leica M for assignment work, for pro assignment work, over a more modern camera like a Sony slash Canon? Ooh, great question. Now, I'm gonna take a sip of coffee before I dive into this one. So why my Leica M series? Now, he's not saying like a Leica SL series because that's more of a pro camera with more pro functions on it, such as, you know, being able to record to dual card slots, having autofocus. That's probably the big one that people are gonna go after. And be able to shoot more frames a second. Now, a couple things. I did a whole deep dive on why Leica, and really when I did it, why Leica, you might think that encompasses all of Leica, but I would say 90% of that video is actually about why I chose a Leica M system for not just my personal work, but for my pro editorial work. Now, to be transparent, for my commercial work, I don't use Leica. I thought about using the Leica SL system, but I was shooting with a Hasselblad system medium format, the X1D. I liked it for a bit, but recently, I don't want to go too deep into this, but recently I switched over from my Hasselblad system to a full-on Sony system. Now, some people might say, "Oh, why? Like, why? Sony's just normal, and Hasselblad's digital, medium format." I looked at the numbers. I talked to my retoucher. I looked deeply at the quality of the images. I asked around to some people, and for me, it really came down to Hasselblad was great. The SL system for Leica is a great setup too, but for me, for my commercial work, it's all about versatility because we do so much in our commercial work. We do a lot of hotels and resorts, but I've also got multiple teams. We're a production company, so I've got multiple teams shooting multiple things at once. So sometimes I've got part of the kit, my other team's got part of the kit. Sometimes we're shooting video and stills. Most of the time that's separately, but oftentimes we're doubling up. So I might have my cinematographer shooting on a Sony FX3 while I'm shooting on a Sony A7R4. So I chose the A7R4 because it's 50 megapixels. Those files were perfect for me. Sometimes I need billboards, not often, but we do need the quality to be really good for print. Autofocus system is amazing. But it was really about it was really about like scaling out, sorry, and versatility. So I can use all the Sony stuff for video. I can use it for stills. We can have a bunch of different lenses. For me to buy like two Hasselblad versions of every single lens, that is going to get very, very expensive very, very quickly. So back to the M system and why I chose that for my personal and editorial work. I like small. I like the way that the M system forces me to work. It forces me to move around a bit more. It forces me to be more thoughtful in my photography. I don't need autofocus. Now, it's not for everyone, so I don't want to say this works for everyone. My editorial work at this stage in my career at 44 years old, is that what I am? Yeah, 44 years old, is I can kind of pick it. I don't want to say this sound cocky. I don't pick and choose any story I want to do, but I can decide if a story comes to me whether I want to take it or not. That makes sense because I make enough money off of my commercial business that allows me to do that. And I'm also focusing a lot of my work now these days on my personal project, Kindred Gardens. Check that out at justinmott.com. So that project itself and that kind of work, my personal work, lends itself to me spending a lot of time on my subjects. I typically spend anywhere from a week to 2 weeks documenting my subjects. So in those situations, I don't typically need autofocus. Now, some people say, you're shooting animals. How do you not need autofocus? Now, I'm shooting it different. I'm not shooting wildlife in a traditional sense. I'm doing wildlife photojournalism. So I'm picking subjects that get close to animals in an ethical way. I'm picking subjects that I can get close to, and then I'm going to have time to let the story breathe. And so yes, like when I was shooting with gibbons once, it was hard to like get a good shot for like while they were jumping around, but I'll take that over all the other time where I was slowing down. I was patient with my photography. It was a lot less gear on me all the time. Having one Leica M system. So my typical setup would be a Leica M with my 35 millimeter, and that's it. And I did it enough for my personal project, Gary, that I noticed that I could also do it for my editorial assignments as well. Because then I had a New York Times travel story I think it was in Hoi An in central Vietnam. And I used that system, and I actually used two cameras because I can't get away with, nor should you try to get away with going on a professional assignment with one camera, especially if you go into remote places like I am. So, if something goes wrong, you're screwed. Now, I trust the Leica system, but anything could go wrong. You could drop it, human error, camera error. So I went with two bodies. I went with my Leica M10D and my Leica M10, and it gave me two different focal lengths. But often I don't shoot with two bodies on at the same time. I have one camera just in there as backup. It's a very expensive backup camera. Or sometimes what I was doing was also shoot with the Ricoh GR. Those files were still good enough. Ricoh GR3 for printing for the New York Times. I actually sent them to them, and they didn't even know that I shot with that, but it was fine. And some of those pictures were published. So I like the Leica system. Again, personal work. I tried it there first. I made sure it worked for me. I made sure I was fast enough with autofocus, fast enough with my exposures, and I liked the way it made me move, the way it made me work. I didn't find that I missed autofocus at all. I'm pretty good at manual focus. I just developed that skill through the years. And when I tried it on that travel story for the New York Times, it worked well. I tried it on another story for the Smithsonian, doing a story about elephant collaring, like the collars they put on elephants, and that worked out well. It worked out better, actually, to be honest. Again, it made me slow down. I shot less. I didn't rely on autofocus. I didn't rely on like zoom lenses. You could shoot primes with the Sony system and things like that as well. But I found it being lighter. I found little situations. Like, here's a good situation. I remember shooting all day up at 4:30 in the morning. Now, up at 4:30 in the morning, shooting till sunset. Maybe you're not that tired. You're young and you have energy. But say day 8 of doing that, you get a little bit tired. Your brain still like gets tired from working creatively. So say day 8, and this is about what it was. I was documenting the anti-poaching unit where they have the dogs, go out and they sniff around, they check the track. So I'm up at 4:30. I'm at the place to meet the guys at 5. They're getting up, they're stretching, they're eating their breakfast. I'm documenting everything. And then, like, yeah, maybe in the afternoon, I'm a little bit tired, and there I am, and like, I might just, as we're transferring in their Jeep, I might just like take the camera off my neck because it's like physically weighing me down and just put it into my bag. But with the Leica, I didn't do that, and like things will pop up. I noticed like, oh, it's a good shot with the guy on the radio, so boom, I take that shot. I'm less likely to like, oh, okay, let me just take a break. Oh, maybe it's a beautiful sunset, or maybe it's not. It doesn't look good, so put on my gear. I'm physically weighed down, mentally weighed down for all that gear in there as well. And I might just like, all right, let's call it a day. But the Leica, I just didn't find I did that. I had more energy. It was just more fun carrying that camera around. I could go talk endlessly about the aesthetic of it, the feel of it in my hands, and why I liked it. But it is definitely not for everybody. But again, I tested it in my personal work. I figured it was applicable to my editorial work, and it was, and it has been. I'll continue to use it that way. So it works for me. If it works for you or not, only you can tell, and you can only tell by testing it out and giving it a shot. So great question. Those are the 5 questions for today. I'll give you guys a couple seconds here. Couple seconds, that's not really nice. 20 seconds. If anyone wants to ask one more question or 2 more questions, I'll try to get to it. If not, I will sign off. But guys, let me know, because this is my first live stream. I got a little bit nicer of a camera. I got a nice Logitech Brio there. I hope it's coming out right. I know my softbox is a little bit hot. I turned it on, didn't really adjust well, because you have to like manually adjust these things. I didn't want to use my pro camera setup because that's downstairs, but I think this quality is pretty good. Let me know how the audio sounds. Let me know how this went for you guys. I'll keep trying to do more live episodes like this, because for me, it's a nice break. I'm sitting here editing. I got my screen here, got my whole 2-screen system here, my map back there, and I like to take a little break every once in a while. This might be a fun way to do that. Oh, a question coming in. This is great here, and it says, I'm a newbie. My first Leica MP240 is always generates very saturated and dark JPEGs. Is it high contrast? I think technical questions. Am I the best person for that? Probably not. I don't mind a little bit of high contrast. I think everything you can do there, you could probably adjust it slightly in post. I haven't had a problem with dark JPEGs too much. Maybe you're not getting your exposures right. Maybe have you checked to see if you've done anything with the contrast internally in the camera? I don't know if you have. Sorry, I don't have a great answer for that question. What a pathetic of me. The first question, I don't have a good answer for you. But if it's too high a contrast, depends what lens you're using. Are you using a Leica lens? Sometimes if you're using, I don't want to say if you use like a third pro lens, if you're using like a cheaper Leica attachment lens, the optics might not be as good. But if you're using a Leica lens, shouldn't really be a problem there. I tend to underexpose my JPEGs anyways, because I like to bring things up, then bring things down. But I shoot in RAW too, so I don't really worry about JPEGs too much. So I'm kind of in all ways the wrong person to ask about this. I shoot in RAW, I use Leica lenses, and I don't find that and I don't mind a little bit of high contrast. So before I go, guys, any question? I take another sip of coffee. I'll introduce you to my dog here, maybe. Chew, come here, baby. Come here. No, he doesn't want. He's just lying down. He's sleeping. He's down there. Something coming up soon on my channel here, guys. I've got this bag here by Wotancraft. Maybe I'll give you a quick introduction here. I'm going to be doing my full review of Wotancraft's brand new series. This is their actual travel series, not camera bags, but their travel bag series made by Camera Company. And I've always loved think tanks quality. Full disclosure, I'm a think tank ambassador, but I used their bags for like 15, maybe like almost 15 years before I even was a think tank pro, think tank ambassador. So they sent me over a series of their new travel bag series, a retrospective travel bag series. I've been testing out for a couple of weeks. I only review things that I do actually want to use and actually use, and I only review them like actually after I've used them, unless I do like an initial impressions video. But I've been using this for a few weeks. This bag, especially their weekender bag, I absolutely love it. Got the full lineup with their tote bag, their little accessory pouches, and their duffel bag, and 2 thumbs up for them so far. Oh, I wanted to introduce you to Chew. Maybe I can. Come here, baby. Come here. Oh, I'm going to introduce you to my dog here. This is Chew. He's getting a little fat because he's been eating our other dog's food, and we just caught him doing it. Chew, want to say hello? I love this little guy. I've been on the road, like on and off, the past 3 months, home for a day or two in between, and I miss him so much. So that's Chew. I'm going to leave him alone now. He is a sweetheart. You can say hello to Chew, or if you want to see more about Chew, you can see my Instagram feed, because I'm definitely one of those people that posts pictures of the dog all the time. Well, we got a question from a Mark with a C. I always like Mark with a C. My best friend is a Mark with a C. Let's see. I should read these questions ahead of time before I actually read them live, because someone could trick me into doing something, and I just gave someone a bad idea, so I shouldn't do that. I'm going to read this question. I'm going to ask. This is a great question, Mark. Mark's question is, sometimes I do some projects for free or at a low price to get my foot in the door to that client or that industry. It worked well for me so far. What is your opinion on this? Mark, I think anything that works well for you, you should keep doing, unless you're like doing something illegal or hurting someone. So it's a great question, because I have people ask me this a lot. And, again, I'm a big advocate of giving my work, a big advocate of people not giving their work away for free if you're an established pro. But I think when you just get started, it's tough. So people ask this question in weddings, right? Like, oh, well, wedding photographers hate it. They get mad. I used to get mad too. So like, charge something. Like, don't just give away their work for free. And I've even had people do hotels. They'll show up for a hotel shoot and say like, oh, we had someone come here and they shot 2 days for us, a bunch of different rooms, and they did it all for free because they want like Intercontinental or one of these Hiltons or Rosewood, one of these big brands on their resume. And I don't love that, but that's just me being selfish, because it infringes on how much we want to charge for our work. I think if you do it free at a high price, like for an industry that normally has a high price point, it could backfire on you, because often those people that do that, then later on the client doesn't really like respect their work to pay them the amount that they want to get paid. So if you can afford to do it, though, like, honestly, who am I to say don't do it? If it gets your foot in the door, I've done it. I could say early on I shot weddings. I always tried to like maintain the value of my work, but now I fight for that more. I fight for it more for younger people, so they don't have to do it, or newer people. So even sometimes, like, I don't need the, like, someone would say like, oh, I remember an NGO shoot. They're like, oh, we wanted, can you do the shoot for free for us? And I said, listen, I'm an advocate of people trying to like get paid for the work. So could you try to find a few $100s for this budget? It's not necessarily needed. It's a project that's great, but just to show the value of my time and work. And I think it's worth it for you guys if you can find the budget. I say it nicely. I'm never rude, and they usually do find the budget. Going lower, I think that's a good compromise. Going free, maybe you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, because they're not going to value you later on. But Mark, if it's worked out for you. But early on when I did video production, I remember I did a big photo shoot. There was a beautiful property, and it was just a great opportunity. This is kind of how I've done it. When there's an opportunity to really make something and really establish yourself, and you have that freedom to do it the way you want. It's that couple for a wedding shoot that's like, oh my God, they're both really gorgeous, and they're shooting at this gorgeous hotel, and they're really nice and easy to deal with, and the wedding planner's amazing, all that fine. So for me, it was this hotel. I wanted to break into doing video production. And I was doing a paid shoot for them. So it was like still making money off of the shoot for my photography. But for the video, I think we charged almost nothing. But I was like, listen, I want to do it this way. I wasn't like a jerk, like I'm going to do it my way. That's it. But I'm like, it's really important I do it my way. It's really important you trust me on this. And I really had a good talk, and they really gave me the freedom. And that video, honestly, launched me to doing videos for Intercontinental. That launched my business, Smart Visuals, which we now have like 6 employees, and we're an approved vendor for Intercontinentals. We shoot all around the world for them. So yeah, I guess it has worked out for me quite well. That's kind of a hybrid one, right? Because I was still getting paid to do the photo. So if you have that opportunity, if the opportunity comes up, and you really want to go for it, and there's a chance to really like show who you are as a photographer, and you can do your work and have that client under your, in your bio. Yeah, who am I to say no? I think go for it. Whatever works for you. Again, I'd just be careful of always doing it for free and always undercutting the market. You're not going to make any friends with other photographers, but in the end, I don't really care if I'm friends with other photographers. I like being friends with other photographers, but that's not my end. It's not my end goal. I gotta put dog food on the table. Great question, Mark. Though I appreciate it. I hope I answered that properly. The next question. Let's see. Oh, great question. Now the questions are flying in. I like this. I guess the live feed. Maybe I should wait a little more time before I start talking and do some sort of banter ahead of time. This question comes from Junichi Nomura. My question is how to start videography if you're inexperienced. Any advice and tips? I'm always a big fan of gaining experience by doing it. Go film something. Give yourself a project to film right now. Like your video, if you're coming from a photography background, you probably have 90% of the gear you need already to just start. I'm not saying you have all the gear. I'm not saying that's the best gear, but just to start, just to get used to it. A couple things you need to do is understand the editing side of it. Even later on, if you outsource it, edit your own stuff. If it's really intimidating for you to get into video editing in the beginning, like it was for me, because I just don't like that. I don't even like photo editing. No, I shouldn't say that too loud, but I mean, I don't mind doing my like Lightroom retouching, but I don't like advanced stuff. I outsource that. I can't stand it. Other people are better than me at that, and I don't want to get better at it. If I could just download the skill, I would, but can't do that. So for editing, for me, when I started doing YouTube, I was like, all right, I got to dive deeper into editing, but it's important to understand the editing part to understand how to shoot better and be a better filmmaker or commercial videographer or cinematographer, whatever you want to do. So I started using LumaFusion because I just like the way it works. It's very intuitive. Adobe Premiere just felt like too much for me. Now I'm better at Adobe Premiere. But in the beginning, I used LumaFusion and it was just drag and drop. I think it was like $100 a year. It also get like Storyblok subscription. So I have like B-roll. I don't use that so much, but the audio soundtracks, sound effects, and some of the graphics and animated stuff, it just was less intimidating for me. It worked well for my brain. It was like, I want to cut here. And when I worked with Adobe Premiere, it's like, you cut here and do that. It's just like, no, it didn't tell me why. LumaFusion would tell me no, and they would tell me why. So I like that. So I got into LumaFusion. I can put a link if it's not clear what I'm saying here. LumaFusion. It's an iPad app. It's not for a desktop. It's not for. I think you might be able to use on other tablets, but you can use it. I use it on my phone and on my iPad. So I would say understand the editing side of it. It'll make you a better cinematographer. Go on YouTube. Go to some of those when you come to gear, what gear to buy and things like that, and simple tutorials. Gerald Undun's really good for that kind of stuff. When it comes to like how-tos, there's plenty of YouTubers out there. Go to someone who like teaches you in the way that you want to learn. But the best way to get better is to go do it. Give yourself a project. Give yourself a sample project of the realistic work that you want to get paid to do. So if you think you want to go do a real estate video, shoot your house. Photograph film your house. Do it in a way that you like. Shoot it in a way that you would for a client, and script it out. Have a shot list and do it. If you need more talking head stuff, film that. If you think you want to do more documentary stuff, go film someone. Follow someone around. Follow your cat around for a day. Follow your dog around for a day. Follow your best friend around a day. Then work your way up into the professional atmosphere. So the best way, the easy way, go put yourself in a situation that is going to be as close to as possible what you want to get paid to or what your passion is to do with cinematography or just doing video in general. That's the way to do it. You gain experience by creating experience. Was that profound? I don't know. I hope that was a good answer. Thank you for your question. Any other questions before I take off here? I'll keep answering. I got editing that I'm procrastinating right now doing. So if you guys have more questions, I'll answer them. I'm going to check here on Instagram real quick, make sure no one asked me anything there instead of here. All right, guys, that's all for today. That was my mailbag series. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Love to hear your feedback about this sort of format rather than filming it in traditional format. I might go back to that, but again, for now, kitchen's being done. I'll show some videos of my kitchen renovation. I'm not doing it. I'm just overseeing it and kind of help. Overseeing it means I peek around the corner once in a while and give a thumbs up. If you're into that stuff, I'll be showing live updates on that on my Instagram account. You can check that out at Ask Mott. For those of you interested in one-on-one sessions where I teach you photography, whether you want to go into the business side of photography or just want to focus on a personal project, there are all sorts of packages starting as low as $125. You can book all those at justinmott.com. Check all those out. Thank you guys for tuning in. I will give you guys a little bit of warning ahead of time. Junichi, I'm probably not saying your name right. I'm sorry. I'm terrible with that, but thank you for your question. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to have a wonderful day. I'm out of here. Bye.